This series took Star Wars to bold new places, and now you can see how they did it. Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 craziest behind-the-scenes stories from The Mandalorian.
I think the most important aspect to a project like this is the love of the world of Star Wars, and to put that love into the storytelling.
For this list, we're looking at some of the most interesting reveals, anecdotes, and production details we learned watching the documentary series Disney Gallery The Mandalorian. Please note, though we will try to keep them to a minimum, there are some spoilers ahead.
I have spoken.
Number 10. Herzog and the Child. For the very first live-action Star Wars TV show, creator Jon Favreau brought together a truly stellar cast. But one of the most surprising additions was eccentric filmmaker and actor Werner Herzog.
How uncharacteristic of one of your reputation. You have taken both commission and payment. Is it not the code of the guild that these events are now forgotten?
Known for his challenging and experimental approach to cinema, Herzog, by his own admission, had never seen a Star Wars film. Playing the client, however, he quickly connected with the franchise's newest icon, the child.
Yoda, baby, beautiful, and it moves, and there are two guys who are moving the eyes and the lips and the facial expression, phenomenal. And they filmed it one-on-one. It was heartbreakingly beautiful.
As Chapter 3 director Deborah Chow explained when discussing Baby Yoda, Herzog apparently began directing the puppet as if it were an actual living creature. And he wasn't the only one.
I think at some point he forgot that it was a puppet, and he got so into the baby that he started directing the baby directly as though he was talking to a person.
According to GINA CARANO, the cast and crew were similarly enamored, and many people could not help but talk to the child on set as if it were real.
Oh my gosh, working with that little puppet was like working with a little baby.
Number 9. Pedro Pascal's injury.
No living thing has seen me without my helmet since I swore the creed. I am not a living thing.
The Mandalorian boasts some seriously impressive fight scenes, but arguably the production's biggest injury happened offset when there weren't even cameras rolling. Walking out of the makeup trailer, Pedro Pascal hit his face on some plywood and opened a massive cut on his nose that required 7 stitches.
I'm telling you, I have been in the most dangerous circumstances to sell all my previous employers out. I will tell you that there were so many things that should not have been happening.
Here's the real kicker though. He had just finished getting covered in bloody makeup for his big unmasking in Chapter 8. So when he showed up at the hospital, the staff assumed he'd been far more seriously injured.
This way he got hurt in his trailer.
I stepped out of the makeup trailer, looking at my sides and walking to a piece of plywood.
A real trooper, Pascal returned to the set that same day and has a good enough sense of humor to laugh at himself for getting injured in such a silly way.
And so he's covered with blood.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's the real blood?
So he goes to the emergency room, they're like, let him in!
This guy's a death's door.
Number 8. Send in the 501st.
You have something I want.
For the last 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, the filmmakers lined up about 30 stormtroopers. Heading into the shoot, however, they realized that it simply wasn't enough to make the impression they wanted, and they were all out of costumes. So they called in the 501st Legion.
They show up not knowing where they're going, and they literally are driving them right into the middle of the set in front of camera, and they were realizing that they're going to be in the show.
Wow.
In their armor that they made themselves.
This organization of stormtrooper cosplayers do events, premieres, hospital visits, conventions, and parades, often at the behest of Lucasfilm. But they never get called in for movies.
We got our whole cast here. We got the 501st. We got them on camera as part of our background, which has been a real treat, real fun.
And so these massive Star Wars fans got to live out the ultimate fantasy of appearing on camera in an official Star Wars production in their own personal armor. They freaking lost it.
We're all kind of like, oh my God, this is real. I think all of us kind of started crying a little bit. It's a good thing we wear helmets because nobody can see us cry.
And as Favreau says, the 501st really know what they're doing. They fully inhabit the stormtrooper role. Number 7, the original Grief Karga.
There is one job. Let's see the puck. No puck. Face to face. Direct commission. deep pocket.
Jon Favreau somehow managed to get the legendary Carl Weathers to join his cast, which is a big deal considering he does so little acting these days. Speaking in the docuseries, Weathers admitted to having some initial reservations, but was convinced when he read the script.
Of course I was interested in working with you. I mean, that was first. But I always want to see the script, man. I want to know, what am I being asked to do?
It's a good thing he did, because GINA CARANO credits him with having served as an incredible example and teacher on set.
He turns it on. It is so incredible. And it was so beautiful to watch you, Carl. Your voice is, I mean, your voice is so powerful and so beautiful. It just sounds like a song and everybody can hear it in the room.
Initially, Grief Karga was set to be an alien character with prosthetics that would have essentially rendered Weathers unrecognizable. He was also meant to die in Chapter 3. Realizing how lucky they were to have him on board, however, they reworked the character to make the most of Weathers' involvement.
Because they did a drawing with Carl with the makeup on. And I'm like, I said to Carl, I said, we can't cover you up. And he's like, I figured as much. Like, he didn't even...
Number 6, finding a musical identity. For The Mandalorian, composer Ludwig Göransson and the filmmakers agreed that the music needed to be an intentional departure from the iconic scores of John Williams, whom Göransson holds in the highest regard.
John Williams, what he's done with film music is beyond words. When I hear it, it makes me feel like a kid again.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
Following Favreau's lead, Göransson looked at the music of spaghetti westerns and samurai cinema. The main theme was, believe it or not, written and performed on a large recorder.
You hear it?
This guy.
On a recorder in his bathtub.
Göransson tried to find organic sounds that fit with this very personal journey, developing songs for various characters and planets, all guided by the sound of that core theme. By bringing in an orchestra, he was also able to create epic moments that, for all the musical differences, create a bridge to that classic Star Wars sound.
Thanks for coming in. You're the first people to have any flavor of what we're doing.
Number 5, the helmet.
Have you ever removed your helmet?
No,
Has it ever been removed by others?
never.
This is the way.
By covering Mando's face, Favreau and company created quite the challenge for themselves. After all, facial expressions are what we as viewers spend most of our time looking at, and are what we rely on to relate to a character.
How do you convey that sense of connection to someone that we can't see his eyes?
To work around this hurdle, the cast and crew had to find alternative ways to make the Mandalorian an expressive and relatable character. Body language replaced the Mandalorian's face, with every movement, or lack thereof, carrying a meaning.
A lot of it actually was about stillness, which was about staying very, very still when something significant's happening. So you can feel that everything stopped for a moment, so that when there's a gesture, it's a very meaningful gesture.
Of course, as Carl Weathers explains, the helmet posed a major challenge for the other actors as well, who had to adjust their acting style and instead learn to focus on more vocal cues instead of facial expressions.
I have to listen so acutely to the voice and hope that that voice is gonna cue me to what this person is, not just the words, but what they're really saying under it.
Number 4, revolutionary technology. The Mandalorian is an unprecedented feat of technical filmmaking.
The Mandalorian is the first production ever to use real-time rendering and video wall in-camera set extensions and effects.
The world of the series was brought to life using the Volume, a 75-foot wide cylindrical room of LED screens, whose walls and ceilings display a photorealistic environment.
And we put content up on that we can then photograph, so that everything was in camera.
Through the use of video game engines, the filmmakers were able to create new environments and have the backgrounds adjust in real time while shooting, moving in parallax with the camera. The level of immersion is so high that Disney execs, and even some people on set, struggled to distinguish between the screens and reality.
Nobody realized that we were in the Volume.
No, I had
they
no
thought
idea.
They were looking at this giant set that they'd spent all this money on.
Yeah, we were TV.
Looked fantastic.
And wouldn't you know it, this is technology that George Lucas predicted.
George Lucas, way over 20 years ago, was saying, like, I was hearing him saying, he's like, one day we're gonna be able to make these movies in our garage. I know it will look like just as real as traveling a zillion miles away.
Number 3, Dave Filoni understands Star Wars like few others. If you've never gotten into the animated side of Star Wars, you might not know Dave Filoni. But as the docuseries shows, he loves this franchise. Hilariously, this walking encyclopedia of Star Wars apparently almost blew his interview with Lucasfilm because he thought he was being pranked.
I was working at Nickelodeon and somebody called from Lucasfilm Animation and I'm like, there is no Lucasfilm Animation. And I thought I had been just so excited about Revenge of the Sith coming out and talking about it all the time that the guys from SpongeBob were just, busting my chops over Star Wars.
He now oversees all of Lucasfilm Animation, but The Mandalorian was actually his first time working in the live-action medium. Everyone involved in this project clearly has a passion for Star Wars, but Filoni is an expert in a league of his own. His analysis of the Duel of the Fates and how it ties into the original trilogy leaves everyone in the room speechless and may just give you a new appreciation for the prequels.
What's at stake is really how Anakin's going to turn out. Because Qui-Gon is different than the rest of the Jedi, and you get that in the movie, and Qui-Gon is fighting because he knows he's the father that Anakin needs. Because Qui-Gon hasn't given up on the fact that Jedi are supposed to actually care.
Number 2, Baby Yoda, designing an icon.
Stop touching things.
There are a lot of things about the child that feel remarkable, including the fact that they somehow managed to keep the character under wraps. But while it's safe to say that the filmmakers knew they'd created something special, we doubt even they knew just what an instant icon this character would become. Baby Yoda didn't just fall into their laps, though. Favreau and company went through countless drawings before settling on a design for the character that felt right.
We got lots and lots of drawings. Some of them were too cute, some of them were too ugly, some of them were the wrong proportions, but they were all informing as we gave notes on each drawing. Dave and we started zeroing in on what it was, and then finally there was one image that Chris Alsman did.
It then took a full 3 months to build the puppet, which requires an entire team to control.
The team at Legacy probably spent at least 3 months on it, building it. They wanted it to be great, and it started to take on a life of its own.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that.
Thankfully, it was all worth the effort. The end result is a collaborative puppet performance so expressive that the actors actually play off of its cues as they would another actor. Before we unveil the craziest behind-the-scenes story from The Mandalorian, here are some honorable mentions. Hal Hickel of Industrial Light and Magic reviewed and analyzed the original trilogy to create a cohesive style guide reel for Star Wars.
It was shots all from original trilogy, mostly from New Hope, but some shots from Empire and Jedi as well, to just kind of illustrate the vibe of how ships move in those films.
Though voiced by Nick Nolte, Wheel the Ugnaught was performed by Misty Rosas in an animatronic mask.
Ugnaught is Misty Rosas. Misty is a unique performer. She knows how to work in a suit, knows how to perform, wearing elaborate masks or prosthetics.
Taika Waititi salvaged old Lord of the Rings props to make his vampire mockumentary What We Do in the Shadows.
We said to Weta Workshop, we said to Richard and all those guys, is there anything you rejected from Lord of the Rings, like creatures you thought you might want to use and then just rejected them? Yeah.
And
they're like, yeah, these ugly pieces of crap that, no one wants. I'm like, we'll take those.
Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, used more miniatures than any other Star Wars film.
Which Star Wars film has the most practical miniatures in it of all the films, including the new ones?
Episode 1.
Kathleen Kennedy pointed out for the show's costume design that Star Wars characters have iconic, recognizable silhouettes.
When it came to the costume and the look and everything, Kathy Kennedy said, the thing about Star Wars characters, they always have a silhouette. You can see them from a distance and you know who they are.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, the men behind the mask.
I love the opportunity to make him as human and as accessible as possible, which is strange to say because it's impossible to get to him because he's covered in armor from head to toe.
Pedro Pascal is the big-name actor who Favreau chose to cast as the titular Mandalorian. While he always voices the character, he calls himself third fiddle to the two other men with whom he shares the armor.
I am third fiddle to two incredible guys, Brendan Wayne and Lateef. I'm modeling my performance around their physicality in a lot of ways, and I wouldn't be able to do it without them.
Actors often have a stunt double, but for The Mandalorian, they brought in experts who could sell the character as a master of his trade. When the guns come out, it's actually firearms expert Brendan Wayne, grandson of the legendary John Wayne.
I got to pull guns, I got to shoot guns, I got to shoot grappling hooks. It's fun. It's fun.
Lateef Crowder, for his part, being a master of martial arts and a practiced stuntman, steps in for the hand-to-hand combat and more physically demanding scenes.
Secret is to always be ready. I'm always training. I'm always, whether it's martial arts, whether it's stunt training, whether it's weight training, just physical fitness, always got to stay ready and just be ready to adapt.
Only by working together can these three men collaboratively bring the bounty hunter to life so convincingly.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.